All right, welcome back. Just kicking it through hour two right here on a Money Monday edition of Liquid Lunch. And we go around the country, we go around the world, we talk about markets, politics, news of the day, all that good stuff. The one thing that we always got going for you is it's the news with the booze. Today I'm doing a little honey jack because we're well fortified with the honey jack, but it is a cool, refreshing drink. And you need a drink to try to sort out all this crazy stuff going on here in our country with the pandemic, or the plandemic, as some people have called it. But we're joined right now by Salim Furth. He is a urban economist to talk about part of one of the executive orders here, Salim, was that the president extended the moratorium on evictions. How does that help on a national scale?
So my understanding is that he wasn't able to fully extend the moratorium, but that he has asked Secretary Carson to do whatever is in HUD's power to limit evictions and foreclosures. I think that's good policy, but the government should be focused on working with landlords and tenants to come to renegotiated agreements, not just banning evictions outright, which will lead to a lot of really bad relationships and will hurt landlords and hurt tenants in the long run.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a Wall Street guy, and when I think about, if you ban evictions and people aren't paying their rent, then what happens is most of these landlords are in leveraged situations where they depend on a good hunk of those rents just to pay their debt service on the thing. So then what happens is these landlords start defaulting on these commercial real estate loans, which puts the banks in a bad position. And then we have a redo of 2008 again, where the government has to turn around and bail out all these big banks. And that's exactly what Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, that's exactly what they're railing about, not bailing out banks and not too big to fail. So this action almost causes the reaction, which will lead to, in my view, another need for a bank bailout.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who would prefer not to pay rent, right? And a total moratorium on evictions, instead of focusing federal help on those who have really lost their jobs, basically says anybody who wants to quit paying rent, you don't have to deal with the consequences of it for whatever the amount of time is. And Congress is asking for a year. Well, lots of people would like to live rent-free for a year and save up for something, but that puts the entire burden on landlords, most of whom are essentially small business people who have, like you said, a leveraged situation, not a ton of cash flow. They rely on month-to-month rents to pay their month-to-month bills, and the prospect of maybe being made whole someday down the road is just not going to cut it with them.
So I want to get to your policy brief when the moratorium expires. 3 quick steps to reduce eviction. But I will say this: I have some background in real estate over the years. My dad was a spec builder, and people buy a property. The good way to look at it is, will you get your money back in 7 years? That's kind of like a simple benchmark, right?
Sure.
So you would think that there's let's call it a 15% profit margin in there, maybe 15, 20% in there after paying all your debt service. 1 6-month period of zero almost takes away like 5 years worth of profits when you look at it. So what are the 3 quick steps to reducing eviction that you outline in your paper when the moratorium expires?
Yeah, thank you. So the first one, the easiest one, is just to help tenants and landlords renegotiate. That's what most people are going to do. You're going to see in a lot of media this week people throwing around some numbers that like 40% of people might get evicted. That's like saying that because 200 million people drive cars today, that 200 million people are at risk of dying in a car accident. Technically, maybe that's true, but it's not actually useful for helping us understand or prepare for car accidents and the number of fatalities there will be today, right? Some people will, but it's not going to be 200 million. And the same way, it's not going to be 40% of renters who get evicted. It's going to be a much, much smaller number. And instead, most people who are late on their rent or can only pay some of it, they're gonna, sit down with their landlord and work something out. The landlord's gonna be grumpy, but he's not gonna kick them out because it takes a lot of money and time to fill a unit. So what can government do? They can write down and just publish for their landlords and tenants model renegotiation agreements to keep both parties inside the law. It can be complicated to write a legal document, and a lot of landlords work with a template that a lawyer, somewhere drew up for a lease. And now we're in a new situation. So let's give them some new templates that say, here, you can take these steps. I cancel, X dollars of rent for you. You agree to stay 2 more months on your lease. That will help to keep cases out of court, keep everyone out of legal trouble, and give both sides the confidence that they're within the law. And governments can do other things. This is mostly not the federal government. This is local governments, mainly housing authorities. They can work with landlords and tenants to say, let's renegotiate. You both need each other. Let's make this work, and be an arbitrator there.
So that's a government template to give them an idea on how to renegotiate. That sounds like a sensible thing. I don't know if there's anybody that sensible in our government right now, but maybe the HUD secretary, because he seemed like a pretty sensible guy, Ben Carson. What are some other things? I know you're a certified financial. Oh, I'm sorry. I know you are a urban economist. You got Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez talking about no rent now in New York City. I mean, no rent at all. Like you said, that means everyone is distressed, and it's not that bad of a thing. I mean, I know some people are distressed. You got 10% of the workforce, 10% of America is unemployed. So maybe there's 10% of the people, maybe double it. Maybe there's 20% of the people out there that need some kind of relief. But 100% is just a move towards Marxism, if you ask me.
That's right. And so where the government has money to spend, the number one thing to do is to trust people. So if you're going to give people boosted unemployment insurance, that's great. It's dollars. They can spend it on whatever they need. If they need rent, they can spend it on rent. If it turns out that they can leave their apartment, live in their mom's basement, and they need to pay off student loans or medical bills or groceries, trust people to make their own decisions and work with cash rather than rental specific. Where you do have to work with rental specific, which some states and cities are going to do, don't just give all that money to the first 25 people who walk in the door. Use it to leverage renegotiation. So you say, hey, we're going to target our rent relief money towards landlords who agree to write down some rent. So if you've got a landlord who is looking at, for whatever demographic reasons, his building is full of people who lost their jobs. And he goes to the city and he says, look, I can cut rent for these people down from $800 a month to $600 a month. Will you chip in 100 of that? And that's where you should use your rent relief to kind of leverage those kind of agreements that keep people in their apartments, that prevent landlords from going totally bankrupt. It's not going to be a good year. It's not a good year for anybody, right? But keep them from going bankrupt, keep them in business.
So then, to some extent, what you're saying is let's give out this money on a pro rata needs basis, not just everybody who comes in automatically, okay, you're free of 100% of your rent. What do you need? Okay, you lost your job, but you're getting $400 a week, and this, you got food stamps. So what can you pay? Oh, you can only pay $800. Your rent was $1,100. Okay, let's go to here's how you renegotiate with your landlord, or vice versa.
Right.
And we could probably do a disproportionate amount of good by rationing that in smaller doses to people need it than just dumping out everything all in one big lump to people, and then everybody else is going to be left holding the bag.
Using it as leverage. So if a landlord says, hey, I lost $10 million this year, don't give them $10 million. Say, okay, if you'll forgive $5 million of that, we'll pay you the other $5 million. Or figure out some ratio that works and that people are willing to play with, and use that government money to leverage private money. And then the final step is just the eviction process is controlled by the courts. Yep. And they can prioritize, right? They can't evict everybody overnight. This idea that the sheriffs are going to come out and put millions and millions of people on the street overnight, they physically can't do it. And they should be smart. And most states, this is controlled by the courts typically, not the governor. Most state courts have already done something like this, saying we're going to prioritize cases where, there's damage to property or violence, or, somebody's been at least 6 months, in arrears on rent. They're not prioritizing I finally missed a one rent payment. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be out on the street. So setting up a smart prioritization system can keep the eviction process running where it should run, which is for tenants who hurt their neighbors and scare people out of buildings, right? You can get displaced by a really dangerous neighbor. And eviction is an important process to protect renters from irresponsible people who live next door to them.
All right.
And I think that part has to be maintained.
All right, Salim, thank you so much for breaking this down for us. We got to have you back soon. We're out of time here, but that's Salim Furth. Check out his policy brief when the moratorium expires. 3 quick steps to reduce eviction. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back with the C.E.O. herself. Galit Tsadik is going to be here, or AKA the financial sharktress, right after this.